Hello. You found your way to Module 1, Getting Started with Farm or Ranch Transfer of the Transitioning Land to New Generation Land Transfer Training. I'm Corey Thomas with American Farmland Trust, and I'll be walking you through this lesson today. In addition to these online resources, we also have trained staff who would be happy to help you in whatever stage you are at in your transfer process. Look at the description below to links to worksheets and information, and to find out how to connect with us. Today, we're going to be covering Module 1 of the Transitioning Land to a New Generation curriculum, and Module 1 is titled Getting Started with Farm or Ranch Transfer. This module introduces the Transitioning Land to New Generation curriculum and prepares participants to engage in a farm or ranch transfer process. It is the first of 5 consecutive modules or workshops designed to help participants gain the basic skills needed to participate in a farm, ranch, or land transfer process. We understand that each participant has a unique situation and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. So we focus on providing you with skills to build relationships with people involved in the process, to help you have needed conversations, make important decisions, and navigate the process. This module prepares participants to prepare to engage in a transfer process. The learning objectives covered will include identify key steps of a transfer process, clarify your values, vision, and goals, name key people involved in your transfer, assess needs and assets of the parties involved, and describe ways to strengthen key relationships. Please note the land transfer training will be adapted and updated as time goes on. This recording is being made on June 27th, 2024. Depending on when you access these resources, some of this material may have been changed or updated. This curriculum was created by American Farmland Trust with support from a national educational team of advisors and a group of subject matter experts. It is made possible by a grant from the USDA Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, award number 2020-49400-3325, with additional support from Farm Credit and the members of AFT. This workshop, or module, introduces the Transitioning Land to a New Generation curriculum and prepares you to engage in a farm or ranch transfer process. You will learn to identify key steps of your transfer process, clarify your values, vision, and goals, name the key people involved in your transfer, assess your needs and assets, as well as the needs and assets of other key parties involved, and describe ways to strengthen relationships among key parties to improve the chance of a successful farm or ranch transfer. Transferring land, and potentially an entire farm or ranch operation, takes time and honest and clear communication, whether within a farm family or between non-relatives. This training is meant for both. The kind of transfer you choose and what will be involved in the transfer process depends on your own unique situation. It is important to be clear from the outset about what kinds of assets are involved, as well as the types of relationships. Will the transfer just involve raw land? If so, it's going to be a lot simpler than if it also includes a farm or ranch business. Will it include any buildings or equipment? This may make it more complicated than just raw land, but still straightforward. Transferring a farm or ranch business can be complicated. It can happen all at once or over time. It can involve transferring everything to one person or dividing up assets between many, and includes the transfer of knowledge and management. When transferring a farm or ranch business, it also will be important to assess whether both parties' goals and needs align with existing facilities. We'll talk more about this in Module 3. Depending on whether the transfer is within a farm family or between non-relatives, the number of people involved and the issues you need to prepare for likely will be different. Timing is important too. When will the transfer begin and end? Will it start happening soon, or will it take place after you or someone else retires or dies? All in all, the process will have 2 or 3 main parts: the people involved, the land and farm or ranch assets involved, and the activities or business on the land. There are a series of steps in a farm or ranch transfer process. We have broken it down into 10 steps on this diagram. You will likely take most, if not all of them, but it is not a linear process. So while a certain amount of order makes sense, you likely will find you move forward and back several times before you are done. Today, we are going to look at 3 of these steps: describing our values, vision, and goals, identifying our needs, and identifying and strengthening key relationships. In this section of the workshop, we will begin exploring your values, vision, and goals and how they relate to the land transfer you are a part of. Your values reflect the beliefs which guide your life and actions with friends and family, at work, or on the farm, and in our communities. Your vision is a statement of where you're headed and what you want to achieve moving forward. If you have or will need to have a business plan, you might translate your vision into a mission statement. But for this training, we are going to focus on the big picture and think of your vision as your hoped-for destination, where you want to be in the future after your farm or ranch transfer process succeeds. Your goals are more concrete steps along the way. You likely will have both personal and business goals for your transfer situation. This is a visualization of different values. It is not a prioritized list, but only an example. The size of the words is random, and the importance of any of them will be different to different people. The key takeaway is that successful relationships are built on values. If your process doesn't uphold your values, it may not succeed. Values are the priorities or principles that guide our behavior, whether in our personal life or business. They're constant, and they're at the heart of who we are, how we see the world, and how we measure how well our lives are going. Whether or not you are aware of them, they guide how you approach decisions and relationships. Examples of values are things like being family or community-oriented, fairness and equality, dependability and a strong work ethic. For your farm or ranch, they might be something like producing high-quality products, meeting the needs of customers, or protecting the environment. Values are important because they help us live lives of purpose. Sharing values also can help move the farm or ranch transfer process along, but since they are different for each of us, it is important to be able to state clearly what yours are. Your vision describes where you want to be in the future, usually at least 5 years forward, but even as much as 20 or more. It's good to know where you want to be in the future so you can make a plan to get there. It's important to ground your vision in your values. What values do you hold that you won't compromise? What characteristics of your values and your future farm or ranch operation do you want to portray? What principles do you stand for? Ultimately, what do you want in life? Here's a slightly edited version of a vision statement of a diversified farm in the Midwest as an example. To explore these concepts more, we can ask you to draft a vision statement of your own. This can inform a mission statement for your operation, which you will need for a business plan, but it also should inform the way you approach the transfer process. After you have clarified your current values and your vision of where you want to go, you will want to think about what will get you there. Your goals should be specific guideposts to help you achieve your vision based on your values. You'll want to set personal and business goals that work well together. A few examples of personal goals are listed here. Let's think about business goals now. This list offers suggestions of some business goals ideas. What do you want your farm or ranch business to look like? We've already touched on this as part of both your current situation and your vision of the future, but it is important to be specific about the kind of operation you want to have. There are some key questions to answer. We won't have time in this session to fully fill these out, but we will have a worksheet to help you think through it in your own time. In a transfer situation, it is also important to learn about the needs of the other party in the transfer. Usually, the goals of an incoming producer are different from those of the exiting landowner, so be sure to have an open dialogue to try and find common ground. Goal setting can take a lot of time, so we're not going to go into depth on it here. We'll share a worksheet with you for homework, but we do want to cover some of the basics of setting solid goals. Setting useful goals can be difficult. They should be simple, yet specific enough to clearly define what you want to accomplish. They should cover the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, as well as how. Many people use the SMART goals framework to set useful and actionable goals. SMART goals are S for specific, well-defined, and clear. M for measurable, because when you measure results, you know whether or not you have achieved your goals. A attainable and realistic enough that you can achieve them with time and effort. R, results focused, meaning they include the resources, knowledge, and time you need to reach your goals. And finally, T, timely or time-bound, meaning linked to a realistic time frame. A goal without a time frame is just a dream. Let's work through an example. A broad goal might be to inherit my grandfather's vegetable operation. That's a worthy goal to start, but it doesn't answer the deeper, smart questions. To make it more specific, you might refine the goal to be to inherit my grandfather's operation and produce a seasonally diverse mix of fruits and vegetables to sell at farmers markets and to local schools. To make that measurable, you might add earn an annual gross income of $150,000, increase crop yields 5% by improving nutrient management, and increase sales by $25,000 by adding 2 farmer markets and a local school to the marketing portfolio. Then check to make sure these are all attainable. Even if it's a stretch, could you accomplish these things in 2 years? What resources do you need? Do you have them? Or what else do you need to get the help that you need? Finally, make sure you have a realistic time frame. For example, to increase crop yields by 5% next year by improving nutrient management and pest control, or to increase sales by $10,000 by reaching out to at least 25 new sales prospects in the coming 6 months. If you are interested in reviewing any of the materials associated with Module 1 of the Land Transfer Training, now may be a good time to review the SMART Goals information sheet and SMART Goals worksheet. We've talked about values, vision, and goals in a farm ranch transfer. It's important these things be clear to you so you can clarify them to others involved. If you are interested in reviewing any of the material associated with Module 1 of the Land Transfer Training, now would be a good time to work on the Vision, Values, and Goals worksheet. We'll have some brief instructions for you, after which you can pause this recording and come back once you have finished. Now that you've clarified your current situation and where you want to go, it's time to think about what you want and need to get there. You will also start identifying who else is involved and what they want or need to get out of the transfer process. Now, let's turn to your farm transfer opportunity. What do you need to get out of it to achieve your goals? For example, if you are the incoming producer, do you only need raw land, or do you need farm or ranch infrastructure like buildings, fencing, irrigation systems as well? Or are you the landowner and what you really need is retirement income and to leave a legacy for your heirs? If you are negotiating with a non-relative, you may want to develop or maintain relationships and/or community networks. One way to assess what you need is to think about the gaps between your current situation and your goals. For now, think about how the farm transfer could address these gaps. For example, could you improve your housing situation? Could it provide employment and sufficient income for you and other family members? In addition, how could the transfer advance your business goals? Consider what resources the other party has that you currently use or could use. This might include the farm or ranch business or intangible assets like expertise, business contacts, or a client list. It might include management experience. These are the things you will negotiate for during the transfer. To assess your needs and the needs of the other parties involved in your transfer situation, it is important to understand assets. Assets are things that have value, both tangible or physical things like land or a bank account, and intangible or non-physical things like strong family ties or social networks. In farm transfer situations, people tend to think of assets as resources with financial value, which can be reported on a balance sheet. We'll talk more about these kind of assets in Module 2 and 3. They include things like cash and savings, land and buildings, crops and livestock, equipment and inventories, and intangible property such as an established brand or a client list. In thinking about the value of a farm or ranch property to you, other assets are equally important but may or may not have a value easily shown economically. Assets such as knowledge, skills, and abilities are important assets too, especially if you're in or entering into a transfer situation that includes any part of a farm or ranch business. Things like farming experience and business management are very important assets. Assets also include things like legal knowledge or strong communication skills. They also include your relationship to your community, having strong social or business networks, access to information and capital resources, even things like belonging to farm or other associations. Finally, assets include the different kinds of things that give a person the power to influence other people and affect the use and distribution of resources. These include comfort with cultural norms, holding positions of power or influence within a family, organization, institution, or society. Let's start with your financial assets. Do you have or need cash or savings or the ability to acquire capital? Do you have or need agricultural land, equipment, or other assets like crops or livestock? What about a farm or ranch business? Now let's think beyond financial assets. What other assets do you bring to the table or need to acquire? For example, do you have or need hands-on farming or ranching experience? Do you have or need production, marketing, or management skills? What about legal knowledge or business expertise? Or communication skills or community relationships? Now that you've thought about your needs and assets, let's think about the other people who have an interest or stake in your farm or ranch transfer situation. If you're an incoming producer, it is most important to think about the person who owns the land and holds other assets that you want to acquire. If you are the landowner or asset holder, think about the incoming producer and what they need. Either way, you also want to consider who else could be affected by your transfer situation, like family members, any employees you might have, and depending upon where you are and the type of farm or ranch operation, other people who might have a stake, like neighbors or community members. For example, if the owner is an institution like a land trust or municipality, members of the community may have an interest in the outcome of the transfer. Before moving forward, step back and consider the transfer from the point of view of the others involved. What do you know about their current situation, values, vision, and goals? What do they need to get out of the situation? What are their motivations for moving forward in a transfer? Thinking about their needs from the outset sets the stage for more effective communication and negotiation down the road. We will be talking more about this in modules 4 and 5. To get us to a win-win outcome takes understanding of your own position and the position of the other party so you can find a mutually acceptable agreement which gives you both as much of what you need as possible. Win-win means you both walk away happy and your needs are met. It is important to consider what the other party needs and to figure out where there is room for negotiation and compromise. A key issue to consider during the farm transfer process is who controls what assets. Essentially, how much power do the various parties have to make decisions and move things forward? Who owns or controls the land involved in the transfer? Who else has a share or interest in the property or operation, and what is their role, their stake, or their power to affect the outcome? Underlying these obvious power dynamics are subtle ones related to identity. Do social or institutional factors like age, family, position, race or ethnicity, gender, education, religion, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status affect their situation or yours? Think about what assets you have, which might balance out these dynamics. If you're interested in reviewing any of the materials associated with Module 1 of the Land Transfer Training, now would be a good time to review the Needs Assessment and Assets Inventory worksheet. Feel free to pause this recording and come back later once you've reviewed those materials. It may seem strange or uncomfortable to talk about building relationships in a farm and ranch setting, but relationships can make or break a transfer situation, especially when it is happening over time. Building and strengthening relationships is a key step to a successful farm or ranch transfer. Relationships of farming and ranching come in many forms. Some are intimate family relationships, while others are temporary and transactional. In the previous section, we identified who is involved in your transfer. Each of those people or organizations comes with their own unique relationship to tend to. Now, we're going to talk about how to build or improve the relationships that are important for you in your transfer. We'll talk through some fundamental communication skills that you can practice and take forward. We encourage you to think about relationships and communication as a key part of transferring your farm or ranch and as a skill you can build over time. Farm or ranch transfer is an involved process and may take years to achieve. It isn't easy. It takes time and care and often involves challenging conversations. You likely will need to plan and adapt and then plan and adapt again. Some conversations may need to happen over time. Fostering healthy relationships throughout the process will improve your chances of success. Fostering healthy relationships throughout the process will improve your chances of success and lead to better outcomes for all the parties involved. Healthy relationships are a process of communicating effectively, understanding the other party's point of view, and cultivating empathy and trust. Effective communication is the process of exchanging information. It involves the person who is expressing themselves, the message or information they want to share, and the people who are listening and receiving that message. In a healthy conversation, each person plays both roles, and we repeat the process to create understanding and clarify our meaning. This may sound simple. In truth, it's quite complex because communication is affected by so many things: feelings, culture, power, generational differences and preferences, as well as the channels through which the message is shared in the spoken word, as gestures, over email or a message, or around the kitchen table. There is a lot happening when we communicate. Boiled down, these skills are key to being an effective communicator. Express yourself clearly. How does this relate to a farm or ranch transfer? You've already worked today to define your values, vision, and goals. In a farm or ranch transfer, it is important that you can clearly explain or express these values to people involved in your transfer. Knowing what you want, what you need, what you have, and what you bring to a situation, and being able to clearly state it will help other people understand you. It's also important to be clear about how you are feeling about a situation so others are aware and can respond accordingly. Listen carefully. Given it is something we do every day, active listening can be hard because we can be distracted by work, life, emotions, etc. Putting intention to listening will support you in building relationships as it helps you to understand the other party, gives insight into how to respond, and helps cultivate trust and empathy. Stay present. Active listening will ensure you stay present in the moment. Again, distractions come in all forms. When it comes to farm or ranch transfers, the conversations needed will require full attention at times. This again will help support strong relationships. Consider a time when you were talking to someone who was distracted. How did it make you feel? How did it affect your relationship to them? Here is a little more detail into the first circle of effective communication. Express yourself clearly. There are two key ways we express a message, verbally and non-verbally. Verbal communication is the use of words to convey a message and meaning. It includes speaking and writing. We use verbal communication in both formal and informal situations. For example, we use verbal communication formally in meetings and business proposals, and informally in personal conversations with family and friends. We use formally when we write letters, plans, and business agreements, and we use it informally, even casually, in notes, texts, and social media posts. Body language, or nonverbal communication, also is a very important part of conversation. Our faces, hand gestures, and body movements all send a message. Body language can be as important to a conversation as the words that are said. Crossed arms and a scowl can stop a conversation before it starts, or at least start it from a place of defensiveness. Smile and wave can bring someone into the conversation who may be feeling on the side. Simply bringing awareness to your own body language will help you be a more effective communicator, and learning to read other people's body language will help you respond effectively. The second circle of effective communication is listening carefully. Listening is the most powerful part of communication. We do have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listening is the act of receiving information. It gives you information and helps you understand what is important to another person. It also helps you prepare to share your story, enter negotiations, and can help avoid conflicts and misunderstanding. Listening will involve 3 things: being present, really paying attention to what the other person is trying to say. It takes focus and intention. To be present, quiet your own thoughts. Don't start preparing a response until the other person has finished speaking. While listening to their words, also listen to the rhythm and tones they are using and their body language. You can show the speaker that you are listening by looking at them, nodding your head, and keeping your body language open. Listening for or paying attention to understand meaning. It also is important to listen for the meaning behind the words and what the person is really trying to say. Listen for what they value, what they need, and how they feel. In a farm or ranch transfer situation, listening for meaning may take many conversations and happen over years. Reflecting back what you hear. A good listening practice is to reflect it back and clarify what you hear. You can summarize what you've heard by saying things like, sounds like what you're saying is, or what I hear you saying is, or I like your idea to. Ask them to clarify anything you don't understand. The trick is not to add your own experience or judgment about their situation, but to listen to their experience. What defines effective communication? How do you receive information best? How does someone communicate something effectively to you? How do you communicate best? And it's important to always consider and ask the same questions for how your audience communicates or how the other party communicates. Moving from effective communication, remember that it is a skill and can be practiced. The next piece of our healthy relationship diagram is understanding other points of view. It's important to understand the point of view of the other people involved in your farm or ranch transfer situation. We started to talk about this as we identified needs and assets. This is a thread that will run throughout this curriculum and one that is important to pay attention to as you move along in the process. Toward this end, take time to recognize and respect any cultural differences, including cultural and communication differences between generations. With as much as 40% of American farmland owned by seniors, transfers often occur between multiple generations. Empathy is a word to describe the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. It is a skill that can be learned and is important to creating connection with another person. Thinking about your transfer situation from another's point of view and putting yourself in their shoes will build greater understanding, reduce the likelihood of conflict that may end negotiations, and help move things along. Looking for common ground is especially important to negotiations. Try to find the overlap between your wants and needs and theirs so you both benefit from the transfer. One good place to find commonality is usually the love for the land or the honor of farming and ranching. Putting yourself in someone's shoes is not to say you must agree with them or get along, but understanding where they are coming from in the transfer process will help keep lines of communication open. It's important to think through what people on the other side of a transfer are experiencing. Depending on the level of your relationship, you may have to ask and be prepared to listen carefully, as you don't want to assume what people are thinking or going through. If you don't know, set aside time to have a conversation. Explicitly making time to talk and understand each other will build trust and empathy and help the process work. Modules 4 and 5 of this curriculum go more in depth on preparing for different conversations. Putting yourself in someone's shoes is a good way to also find commonalities and points of connection. If you can find ways to think about your shared experiences, you'll be a step closer to the third piece of our healthy relationships pie, cultivating empathy and trust. Bringing it all together, healthy relationships are a process of effective communication and understanding other points of view, all of which will help cultivate empathy and trust. These are all intertwined ideas that work together to strengthen relationships. The final piece of the pie is cultivating empathy and trust. Like a farm or ranch transfer or a growing season, trust and empathy are a process. It may take a transformation of thought from one or both parties. Trust and empathy may exist one day and be challenged the next. Sometimes there is conflict in trust, but effective communication can support moving through the conflict. While it is harder to pin down a skill of trust and empathy, there are actions you can take to communicate trust. Trust can be complicated and is influenced by the dynamics of a relationship. Typically, in a farm or ranch transfer, the landowner, or person with the most financial assets, holds more decision-making power than the incoming generation or land seeker. But the landowner likely has specific needs they are looking to meet. These dynamics certainly affect how trust is communicated and how relationships are maintained. As we have talked about considering other points of view and communication differences, It is important to recognize these power dynamics affect our ability to give or receive trust. Although trust is not a simple and straightforward concept, we can still look at some actions that help to communicate and cultivate trust over time. If you are interested in reviewing any of the materials associated with Module 1 of Land Transfer Training, now would be a good time to pause the recording and review the Cultivate Trust worksheet. We've covered a lot in this short time together. One more time for good measure, though, these are skills that need practice to be more effective. Please feel free to review the associated materials and continue to use those as you think about and progress through your own transfer. As a reminder, as we begin to wrap up, here are 10 key actions in a farm or ranch transfer planning process. Remember that it is not a linear process, and while a certain amount of order makes sense, you likely will find you move forward and back several times through the process. Again, there are some worksheets and associated materials you can use in conjunction with this presentation. Those include the Needs Assessment and Asset Inventory worksheet, the SMART Goals information sheet, and the SMART Goals worksheet, as well as the Cultivate Trust worksheet. Thanks for listening to Module 1, Getting Started with Farm or Ranch Transfer of the Land Transfer Training. We hope you found this helpful. Remember, we do have trained staff who can help you continue on in your process. Look in the description below to find out how to connect with us.